Okay, we already talked about this, but let's section 1.3 talks about it in a little more detail, so let's take a look at that. Population sample. They say we will encounter the terms population and sample on almost every page of this text. Consequently, understanding the meaning of each is crucial. Suppose a statistician is interested in knowing the percentage of all voters in a city who will vote for a particular candidate in an election. So you want to know what percentage of people are going to vote for your candidate or for a candidate. So you want to know that's all the voters in the city would be called the population in this case. But you can't ask everybody, so you're going to take a sample, right? Another example is suppose you want to know the sales of all companies in New York City. You can't do that. You can't find out all that information, but you can take a sample of, say, 100 or 1,000 companies. You want to know the prices of all houses in California. You don't want to do that, but you could take a sample of 1,000 houses. In these examples, the statistician is interested in all voters, all companies, all houses. Each of these groups is called the population for the respective example. In statistics, a population does not necessarily mean a collection of people. It can, in fact, be a collection of people, or any kind of item such as houses, books, television sets, cars, and so on. The population of interest is usually called the target population. Okay? Okay, you can read this. And then we say a sample. A portion of the population selected for study is referred to as a sample. Okay, so this is like the whole population, and then we take a sample. The collection of information from the elements of a population or a sample is called a survey. I'm sorry. What is it? It's called a survey. A survey that includes, so a survey is just when you collect the information from whether it's going to be a population or a sample. A survey that includes every element of the target population is called a census. So census, like in the United States, every 10 years the government performs a census. Means they try and collect data from everybody in the country. They don't, obviously they're not going to get everybody, but they try to, so that's called a census. Often the target population is very large. Hence, in practice, a census is rarely taken because it is expensive and time-consuming. In many cases, it is even impossible to identify each element of the target population. Usually, to conduct a survey, we select a sample and collect the required information from the elements included in that sample. We then make decisions based on the sample information. Such a survey on a sample is called the sample survey. Okay? So you can take a look at this in your text. Okay, now representative sample. The idea of taking a sample is to make a guess about the whole population. So you don't want to take a sample that's like not representative of the population. So for example, suppose I want to know about everybody at APU, but I only sample people from one country. Okay, that's not a very good sample. I mean, it's not representative, right? If I just look at people from one country, I'm not really going to know about everybody at APU. It's going to be, we say the sample is going to have bias, or we say that the results that I get are going to be biased, right? So it's not a representative sample. They say the purpose of conducting a sample survey is to make decisions about the corresponding population. It's important that the results obtained from the sample survey match the results that we would obtain by collecting a census. So we hope that it's going to be, the results would be similar to what we would do if we could do a census. Otherwise, any decision based on the sample survey will not apply to the corresponding population. As an example, to find the average incomes of families living in New York City by conducting a sample survey, the sample must contain families who belong to different income groups in almost the same proportion as they exist in the population. In that case, the sample would be called a representative sample. Inferences derived from, remember, inferences mean guesses, derived from a representative sample will be more reliable. So a representative sample is a sample that represents the characteristics of the population as closely as possible. Okay, next thing is a random sample. A sample may be random or non-random. In a random sample, what do we mean by a random sample? We mean that each element of the population has the same chance of being included in the sample. If every element in the population has the same chance of being included in the sample, we say that sample is random. However, in a non-random sample, this may not be the case. Okay? So that's what we mean. Sorry about that. Hope that worked. That's what we mean by random sample. So here's the definition. Okay, let's just do a little bit more here. One way to select a random sample is by lottery or draw. For example, if we are to select 5 students from a class of 50, we could make sure that we got a random sample. We could write the names, 50 names, on separate pieces of paper. Then we put all the papers into a box and mix it thoroughly. Then we randomly draw 5 slips from the box. So that would mean that would be called a random sample. The 5 names drawn would give a random sample. On the other hand, if we arrange all 50 names alphabetically and then select the first 5, that would not be a random sample. That would be considered a non-random sample, because the students listed 6th to 50th, listed 6th to 50th would have no chance of being included in the sample. Okay, another term that we use is, we talk about with replacement or without replacement. So we go back to this, we draw 5 students from 50. There's 2 ways to do it. We could take out, we put them all in a box, mix it, and then we take out the first name. Now the question is, do we replace the first name before we pick out the second one, or do we not replace the first name? So that's what we mean by with replacement or not with. And so if you do it one way, you get one kind of result, and if you do it the other way, you get a different kind of result. So we want to distinguish between doing it with replacement and without. And sometimes we'll do it one way and sometimes we'll do it another, but we need to know when we're doing it with replacement and when we're doing it without. In sampling with replacement, each time we select an element from the population, we put it back in the population before we select the next element. Thus, in sampling with replacement, the population contains the same number of items each time a selection is made. Right? Because we put the paper slip back into the box before so again there are 50 to choose from. As a result, we may select the same item more than once in such a sample. Right? Okay. On the other hand, sampling without replacement occurs when the selected element is not replaced in the population. In this case, each time we select an item, the size of the population is reduced by one element. Thus, we cannot select the same element more than once in this type of sampling. Most of the time, samples taken in statistics are without replacement. Consider an opinion poll based on a certain number of voters selected from the population of all eligible voters. In this case, the same voter is not selected more than once. Therefore, this is an example of sampling without replacement. Okay. Okay, so you can try some of these here. Explain what's population, sample, representative sample, random sample, sampling with the things we just went through. What's the difference between a census and a sample survey? Why is conducting a sample survey preferable to a census? And why is it preferable to do a census rather than a sample survey? You can talk about both of those. Explain whether each of the following constitutes a population or a sample. So look at these and decide which ones are. So let's do the first one together. Pounds of bass caught by all participants in a bass fishing derby. So bass is fish, and they're talking about some kind of contest for a fishing contest. And they say pounds. How many? And we want to sort of figure out how many pounds each person caught. How many pounds of fish? And here they say we look at the pounds of bass caught by all participants. So would that be the population or just a sample? That would be the population. That would be all of them. If we just looked at a random sample of say 10 out of, suppose there were 100 people in the contest, but we just looked at 10 people's pounds of fish that they caught, that would be a sample. Okay, here's another one. Credit card of debts of 100 families selected from a city. Okay, I'll let you do the rest of these. Okay? I won't tell you. Okay, let's stop here.